The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
If you're one of our live listeners, I apologize that we're a little bit late. But go ahead and get rolling. I hit the wrong button, Caleb. It's on me. Rookie mistake. What's going on with your partner here? I'm very concerned. And the screen says your name's Dave Hooker. So we've got to tighten this ship up a little bit.
Yeah, okay. I'm doing – this was a we're talking about hot seat coaches later on in the show, and this is a Billy Napier running too many men out on the field on the punt returns.
This is hot. This Dave's on the hot seat. All right, here we go. We are loaded up. We're going to talk a lot of Tennessee defensive line today as Rodney Gardner visited with the media after Tennessee's first day in full pads. The Vols might have the deepest defensive line in the nation. Which unproven defensive lineman should the Vols be most excited about? Also, the ruling comes down on Jim Harbaugh. I want to get into that because I'm not so sure that Tennessee shouldn't target some Michigan commitments at this point and maybe some transfers down the line. 5 players the Vols will miss the most this season, this day in Tennessee sports history, and a fight at Hoover High School that was physical between a coach and a player. And the reason I wanted to discuss this is because Josh Heupel has a very new age way of coaching when it comes to physicality. Tennessee's practices, I don't want to use the word soft, but they are not as physical as back in the day. So I may sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I want to discuss that as well. It's obviously working, so don't have too much to complain about at this moment. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, today's tough question. Do the Vols have the deepest defensive line in the nation? This was your tough question. This is going to be difficult to answer, but it is pretty deep. It's legitimately too deep. And today's tough question brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks. Caleb, how are you quantifying this? We don't pretend to know the too deep across the nation of every defensive line, but I don't know how you could be any deeper now, especially when you include the fact that you have an elite guy at one position. I don't know of any defensive line in the country that I would trade Tennessee's for.
I wouldn't trade Tennessee's for any defensive line in the country. I think Tennessee should be very, very excited about this defensive line. It is by far the strength of this team, beyond even Nico Iamaleava. The defensive line, if you just had to say what is the strongest part of this team, it's easily the defensive line. And Dave, it really flies in the face of the idea of how Josh Heupel likes to build his team, doesn't it? The idea that the defensive line would be the strongest part of the program, or how people perceive of Josh Heupel. How about that? That's what I meant to say.
Yes, the perception is that he just throws the ball all over the park and doesn't care about defense, but we know that's not true. But you're right, that is the perception. And really, you don't want to be in this position where you have to completely lean on your defensive front because you don't want to rebuild your secondary every single year. So you would think that next year that Tennessee's strength would be in the back end. So then you're having the opposite conversation that you're having now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's very intriguing that they are this way. And and the crazy part is they've gone more for upgrading it. And I got to give Tim Banks credit on this because the idea would consistently be that, don't worry too much about the defensive line, focus on the edge rushers, and then have a solid secondary because your offense will get a lead and force obvious passing downs. Now, the edge rushers, that's certainly how Tennessee's built. But the way this line is constructed, they're very committed to stopping the run defensively. That is as clear as day. I mean, and we can go from the whole front seven on that. And they've not just deepest defensive line in the NFL, in college football. Does this rival the depth of the defensive lines that Fulmer had in the late 90s and early 2000s?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a bold statement.
It does. Obviously, you had Hainsworth and Henderson together. Now, that's a 100-year type of combination, okay? So I'm not that's different. But outside of it, just his average defensive line from year to year, I think this is comparable. Now, some guys have to take a step. I'm not willing to say they're national champions quite yet. I mean, Joshua Josephs is a prime example, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the program. Does he take that next step? Because he slumped last year, according to Rodney Garner. Other guys like Dominique Bailey, does he take a step? Elijah Simmons, does he stay healthy? So from the top to bottom, I think this does compare with some of Fulmer's better offensive line or defensive lines. You could probably pick one defensive line that I would say would be better, but you also have to remember this. You're not able to go out and get guys like Jackson Moy, who I think is practically a starter when the season starts. Whether or not he's the first guy out there, I don't know. But you got to remember, Fulmer never had that opportunity, so you can fortify a defensive line more.
That's true. You can absolutely do. It's much easier to build depth, but the crazy and the funny part is that Josh Heupel was focused on doing that in the offseason more than in other positions where you thought he might be weak. And I think that really speaks to Josh Heupel's character and what he wants to do. Josh Heupel's not naive about, yes, he loves tempo. Yes, he loves to throw it all over the field. Josh Heupel's making it very clear, though, that he wants a team that's physical in the trenches. And I know, again, it's funny because we're going to talk about, fighting and things like that in practice later in the show. But even if we disagree with Josh Heupel's, or if you disagree with Josh Heupel's approach to that, or if I disagree with Josh Heupel's approach to that, that doesn't mean he doesn't want this team to be physical. He clearly wants this program to be physical. He wants to build from the offensive line and the defensive line. He wants to build from the trenches out. And he wants to find just the right quarterback that runs his system. I got to give him credit. He has spent a lot of time trying to beef up that defensive line in a way that he didn't have to. He didn't have to go out and get Omar Norman-Lott 2 years ago. He didn't have to go out and get Jackson Moy. And you're right. You mentioned guys like Tyree Weathersby and Tyree West. And I mean, like they just have bodies, and all of them are competent too.
Agreed. They're very competent at work trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Time is money. I'm wondering, perhaps is this defensive line more important than Nico? Well, the perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need, could probably even carry Tennessee's defensive linemen around town. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy. Choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. And if you're a contractor, they've got cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide body. They are installed. They've got cranes. They've got all kinds of work trucks that will save you time, and time is money. WorkTrucksLLC.com, WorkTrucksLLC.com in Birmingham, down in Birmingham, and on Clinton Highway in Knoxville. That's Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. All right, Caleb, I'm going to ask a crazy question. Are you ready?
Let's hit me with it. I'm ready. Love crazy questions because then I think of crazy Caleb conspiracies.
On postage board on the YouTube channel. It's our poll question. I guess it's kind of today's tough question as we've adapted. We've audibled. What is more key to the Vols' success? Defensive line or Nico? Are you there?
Okay, here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to be anticlimactic and not go hot takey, and I am going to say Nico. If this were Hendon Hooker, I would say defensive line. If this were many great quarterbacks in the history, if this were your run-of-the-mill Josh Heupel quarterback who's going to throw for 5,000 yards and be a Heisman contender in November, I would say the defensive line. I think Nico Iamaleava is a step above every quarterback that could be great in Josh Heupel's system. Again, he is so rare, guys, as a fit for this system. And so the only reason I'm saying Nico is because I've never, ever, ever been higher on a quarterback landing in the perfect system than Nico with Josh Heupel. Again, I repeat it, and I'm going to say it every time we bring it up. It's Tim Tebow to Florida. Now, Florida had an elite defense in 2008, Dave. We know that. They had an amazing defense. Look at the NFL. You know, when they weren't killing people, they were tackling people. And I got to say, you would still say Tim Tebow was more valuable than the defense of those title teams, wouldn't you? Of that.
Wow, I'm not sure. I thought those Florida defenses were way underrated.
Okay, what about Tim Tebow versus just the Florida defensive line? You're
Okay,
taking Tim Tebow at that point.
I would take Tebow. But what if I told you this? Whoever the are in these football team, whoever those starters end up being, would you take the second string defensive line or Gaston Moore if you had to, or Merkling, or whoever the second string quarterback might end up being?
Oh my gosh, I would take the second string defensive line. Like, that's not even a question. Like, yeah, that second string defensive line could start on most SEC teams.
Yeah, probably could. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Maybe in retrospect, that was a dumb question. But the poll question is up there. What's more important to Tennessee's success, defensive line or Nico Iamaleava? And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's the defensive line. I'm sorry, Caleb. You are wrong occasionally. But you're taking Nico. You're sticking with Nico.
I am sticking with Nico. I am sticking with Nico because Nico is such a rare talent. Another one. Okay, I got a question for you. 95 Nebraska. Normally, you're taking the Nebraska offensive line. You're taking the black shirts over the quarterback running the triple option.
Yes.
But would you take Tommy? But are you taking the black shirts or Tommy Frazier? Tommy Frazier's a little bit special and unique, right?
I'd probably take Tommy Frazier. I think you and I may differ on Gaston Moore. I feel like with Josh Heupel's offense and him knowing it as well as he does, that if he stepped in, Tennessee would still have a top 5 offense in the SEC this year. I mean, I'm not saying they don't need Nico. Do not get me wrong. But I think with what they have, very average quarterback play would still equal a top 5 offense.
I agree, but that's why I can't consider that important versus the Tennessee backup defensive line. But that's not about Gaston Moore. That's about the offense Josh Heupel runs.
Agreed.
More than anything else. Josh Heupel just runs such an efficient offense. You can't replace that backup defensive line. I think that's the real trick with this. So I'm sorry. I'm going to be very high on. Again, and I just told you, if this were Hendon Hooker, guys. I just said if this were Hendon Hooker from 2 years ago, I would take this defensive line. I am telling you, I would take Nico Iamaleava over the defensive line because I think Iamaleava will be a step up from Hendon Hooker.
How long have you covered/followed Tennessee football?
My first year following them as a fan, I was 9 years old. It was the 97 team that won the SEC title. The first game I really remember distinctly watching was the 97 Tennessee Auburn game.
Pretty good year. Makes me feel really old. So who's the worst quarterback that you've seen in your time following Tennessee? Who's the worst quarterback you've seen?
I've seen some bad ones. I'm going to have to go with worst. I mean, Joey Matthews against Southern Miss was pretty darn bad. But I will probably have to go with Rick Clausen. Sorry. I mean,
Rick Clausen or Joey Matthews with this offense would be top 5. Agree or disagree in the SEC?
Totally disagree because the one thing this offense does require with Josh Heupel, you have to have arm strength. You have to have arm strength. Rick Clausen had the worst arm I have ever seen of a quarterback in the history of football.
I'll give you that. Clausen wouldn't do it. Matthews, though, had a really strong arm.
I didn't see it when he was playing. His only touchdown pass was a deflection that Cedric Wilson caught.
Well, I still say going back to spring practice when the quarterbacks were live, that destroyed his confidence, and he never let it rip like high school. I did play-by-play for some of his high school games, so I saw him, and he had an SEC arm, but I don't think he was ever comfortable in that football field. I think mentally is where he fell short a little bit. Not that he wasn't smart, I think that his confidence got very thrown off by that.
Well, yeah, when you have Al Wilson and Sean Ellis hitting you every other time you throw the ball.
That's right. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Which unproven defensive lineman should the Vols be most excited about off the hook sports? Banks and Jones, 30 seconds. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
So, I'm listening to Rodney Garner, who visited with the media yesterday, and I'm quickly realizing that he's probably the most honest coach that Tennessee has on their staff. Everybody else is about coach speak, and I don't mean honesty is in line, but he just comes out and tells us that Joshua Joseph's had a sophomore lull, and Caleb, there's more to that. So I want to talk about those guys, because what unproven defensive lineman should Tennessee fans be most excited about? I'll go ahead and tell you mine is Joseph's because of his physical ability. However, he also said something about James Pierce that was a little disappointing in terms of his mental toughness. Share that with us.
So, James Pierce, you said, or Joshua Josephs?
Well, I think he got frustrated by getting caught behind James Pierce.
Yes. Joshua Josephs said that, and I don't know how to take this. He basically admitted, Josephs himself admitted this, that he got a little jealous seeing his roommate James Pierce be so successful last year. And that, it kind of played a role in his sophomore slump. I don't know what to make of that, because I will say, sometimes jealousy can be a good thing if you use it as a way to make you better yourself, right?
Agreed.
But it can be a bad thing if you say, I see somebody next to me doing well and I'm going to sink into a hole and cry about it now. And it feels like Joshua Josephs did the second thing, which raises major questions about his mental toughness, doesn't it?
It does, but are those questions answered because he's willing to step up to the mic, literally, and talk about it? I mean, guys mature right in front of our eyes. That's one of the things that I like about college football more than the NFL. Does it show a sense of maturity that he said, hey, I was jealous. It affected me. Garner's talked about the lull, but Rodney Garner's now talking about how Joshua Josephs is back. So is it a good sign that he was step up and admit that?
Okay. It depends. Sometimes they're red flags, sometimes they aren't. Jalen Hyatt admitted that he was salty on himself because he didn't become the starter in the slot behind Velus Jones in 2021. And he turned that around and he balled out in 2022. So you say, okay, he fixed his mentality. Tyler Bray in 2011 said, I was kind of dumb going into 2012, guaranteed Tennessee would win the SEC title, and said, I was just kind of dumb last year. I didn't have great leadership, and, I need to do better this year. And while his stats were better the next year, Tyler Bray's leadership remains the worst that Tennessee has ever had. So now maybe you could blame that on Derek Dooley. He didn't have great coaching above him, but I think Tyler Bray just was a very lazy player. And so I think it somewhat depends. Sometimes the switch flips and it stays flipped for the rest of your life. Reggie White flipped a switch going into a senior year at Tennessee, right? And
he did. He was very people don't remember that. He was very average his junior year.
Right. But Reggie White never turned it off after flipping that switch, did he?
No.
Yeah. So the question is, can you flip the switch and can the switch stay on? Because Joshua Josephs, spoiler alert, you ain't going to be in that much larger of a role this year than you were last year. You're the backup Leo. You're not going to beat James Pierce out for that job. So can you be willing to have a different mentality when your role is largely the same as it was last year?
Yeah. As far as I believe that he will have enough of a role. I realize he's behind James Pierce, but I think he'll have enough of a role to make him happy. And he needs to think about this. He needs to think about James Pierce is gone after this year. So he could do the same thing that James Pierce had, because he's kind of like a poor man's James Pierce from what I've been told. He's incredibly talented, but James Pierce is kind of the elite level above that. What other,
kind of like how Kobe was a poor man's Jordan.
That's a great comparison. Which other unproven defensive linemen should Tennessee fans be most excited about? I know that I sound like a broken record because I'm right. But if Elijah Simmons stays healthy, that will be the guy you should be most excited about. But if you make me take out the qualifications, it's Jackson Moya. It's not close. I keep hearing great things about him. He is going to be a part of the rotation from the get.
Yes, I'm hearing a lot of great things about Jackson Moy too. And Dave, I hate to do Polynesian to Polynesian comparison. And I actually don't think Jackson Moy's Polynesian. I think he's some other form of Samoan. And I sorry guys, I really apologize up front for not getting it right. I'm trying not to lump, different ethnicities together. I know that's not an appropriate thing to do. However, given his size at 6'2", 307, and given his backstory coming from out west like that, do you see a Jesse Mahalona type in him?
Jesse Mahalona was a little bit undersized and kind of a quick guy. I think,
but isn't Jackson Moy kind of undersized too?
Yeah. How big do we have Moy listed?
Moy's listed at 6'2".
Yeah. What's his weight? Because
307.
307. Mahalona played around 280, and I think he may have played even a little bit lighter than that. He was one of the most unique players I ever covered because he was like a fire plug guy that had a leverage. So no, I don't think they're similar players. And the other thing about Mahalona is just and I will tell you this, if Moya has the motor, which is common, maybe we're lumping together Polynesian players. I don't know, but they oftentimes, I don't know that Moya is Polynesian, but Polynesian players oftentimes have a great motor. If he has anywhere close to the motor that Mahalona has, then Tennessee's going to have another star on their hand, not just another good player.
Yes, I totally agree. And I mean, that's the question. Does he have the motor? And they loved him at Stanford from everything I understand. So I think this is a very good pickup for Tennessee. And you're right. I know he's not 6 feet, but he is 6'2". Sometimes being that undersized player, understanding leverage can really throw offensive linemen off, right? Because you're blocking these 6'5", 6'6" guys, and you're trying to get leverage on them. And here comes this 6'2" guy that kind of is sneaky and gets underneath you and can make tons of plays. I think that's a huge factor in this. I
think it helps Cooper Mays a lot on the offensive line. He's probably 6'1", 6'2". I think that leverage helps him a lot. Now, I am going to, if I may, give us a little bit of credit because Moondrops Beauty says the fact that Coach Garner said what he did about Moya is very telling. Rodney doesn't just hand out comments like that. You're absolutely right. But who told you 2 weeks ago that Jackson Moya, before practice even started, that he was going to have a great camp and be a special player?
Oh, you did. You did say that, Dave. You were the first to say that.
Yeah. So may I raise my hand? So hit the like and subscribe button if you like news, if you like the hot takes that we provide. But we definitely want you to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us bring more people into the program. Just had someone that signed up for our Hooker's Corner. We greatly appreciate that. And I want to remind you that you can do the absolute same. Brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures. Knoxville's oldest card shop, 35 years. They are awesome. You've got to check it out. Please tell them that Off the Hook Sports sent you. We would greatly appreciate that. And you can win a fantastic monthly prize thanks to Sports Treasures, which last month was that mini helmet signed by John Henderson. This month, picking up a new prize. Excited to announce that tomorrow. And all you have to do is sign up Hooker's Corner, and that's very easy to do. You can go with the QR code right there. You'll get increased recruiting information, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. You can be a member for just $9.98 a month. Also, more prizes to win thanks to our good friend Rick Terry. We've got Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, where you can win a Garmin. That's right, a Garmin watch that is presented by our good friend Rick Terry at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Get ready for Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. You just have to be a member of Hooker's Corner, not a paid member, free member, and you have to subscribe to the YouTube page. And when we surpass 8,000 subscribers, we're going to give away a watch worth $1,000. So get on board now. And we thank Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. They've got the fire opals that are awesome for game day, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. That's RickTerryJewelry.com. Caleb, let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history, if that works for you. And as we get closer to football season, these get better. There are times where I don't envy Caleb and having to pick this day in Tennessee sports history in April. Those can be much more difficult. This one should be easier. This day in Tennessee sports history, right after this. Stay tuned. Off the Hook Sports, 2 minutes, and we're back.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Remind you that we're available wherever you podcast, on Spotify or Apple. Just search for Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Banks & Jones, play to win. Caleb Calhoun, it's time for this day in Tennessee sports history. What have you got for us, sir?
On this day, since we mentioned him in the last segment, 12 years ago, Tyler Bray was in court ahead of Tennessee's 2012 season. He was in court.
I have to be honest. Your Googling ability is pretty phenomenal. How did you find that out?
Oh, I remember the court date was around this time, so I was trying to confirm if it was August the 8th, but it was for charges of reckless operation of a personal watercraft and failure to have a boating education certificate. According to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, Officer Dwayne Williams, Bray was driving a jet ski with a female passenger when he was observed hot dogging with another jet ski Hot dogging is almost like playing chicken. That's what the term refers to. The other jet ski tipped over, spilling the unidentified occupants into the water. Bray then sped near the swimmers, spraying them with water, who added he was almost on top of them. So Tyler Bray, ahead of the season, decided, let me go be reckless on a jet ski because, that's not dangerous at all, guys.
I had a jet ski that goes 70 miles an hour, and you need to just stay away from stuff. I mean, go have your fun out in the middle of the lake, but you don't need to be close to people, and that used to drive me crazy. Now, I will say this. There's something to be said with how you handle the TWRA when they pull you over. Okay, so if you have like 16 open beers, you're in trouble. But if you have attitude, which Tyler Bray may or may not have had, they're going to come down harder on you than they would otherwise, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's be honest, Tyler Bray, you don't think he had attitude when they came towards him?
Yeah. So I'm just telling you, the TWRA, maybe one of us was driving through the Smoky Mountains with an open container once. They will let you go as long as you're respectful.
Yeah, I believe that. And I believe Tyler Bray was not. I mean, this is the same guy that was throwing beer bottles on that would hit someone's car trying to hit a trash can while throwing beer bottles. And I mean, okay, I have to ask you, and I'm sorry, I throw him under the bus a lot because I don't respect him, but is Tyler Bray the most entitled quarterback you ever covered at Tennessee?
Yeah. And he's probably the worst leader too. Which is a bad trait to have as a quarterback. I think Rick Clausen created some issues, but no, I'd have to say Bray. Bray. To have all that talent, it's just.
That's what I was going to ask. So if Bray, and this is the last question, if Bray had the intangibles that you need in a quarterback, do you think he'd have been a first-round draft pick and a starter in the NFL?
Yep. If he has really good intangibles, he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Wow. Yeah,
I think he has that much ability. Do you agree or disagree?
He's got the best arm of any quarterback to ever play in Tennessee. His arm was incredible. I have not seen an arm like that since, honestly, at Tennessee.
He had a pretty good little whip there on him, didn't he? All right, so there are going to be coaches that are going to be in the hot seat. We're going to get to that. But first, there are going to be some players that Tennessee is going to miss headed into this season. Who does Tennessee miss the most? It's 4 Downs now, and it's brought to you by our good friends at TriStar Hats. For the latest in TriStar Hats, go to the original hats, apparel, and more. TriStarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
We're going to go a little rogue and go Colorado 5th down style because we got 5 players. We're going to discuss who Tennessee might miss the most. So let's do it this way. Instead of going rogue, let's do it. What down is it, Coop, as we get rolling?
Coop here. 1st down.
Thanks, Coop. And what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. Tennessee's 1st down question is the Vols' biggest loss on the offensive side of the ball is whom?
Well, that's their biggest loss, period, and that would be Jalen Wright. That is the one player they're going to miss. Tennessee does not have a feature back right now this year, yet. They may find one in Peyton Lewis, but they didn't just have a feature back in Jalen Wright. They had a feature back who was a future NFL star last year.
I'm going to debate that because I think that Tennessee's offense can make a running back look better than he is. It would be great to have Jalen Wright back, but I think Jeremiah Crawford at right tackle is definitely in the conversation if you'd like to have back, because then you would have John Campbell at left tackle and you wouldn't have to take the risk of a transfer. There's always a risk, right?
Wow, David. So for those who don't know, Jeremiah Crawford just missed my list, and I considered putting him on there. We talked about it this morning, and then I thought about it. I'm like, on just a general scale, would you rather have Lance Hurd and John Campbell or John Campbell and Jeremiah Crawford? I think you're taking Lance Hurd and John Campbell. So I think Tennessee might upgrade at tackle.
I wouldn't. I would take the known as opposed to the unknown. For all I know, Lance Hurd is schizophrenic and wild and crazy when I recruit him. But I know Campbell and Crawford. Yeah, so I would take the known over the unknown.
I sometimes – I really have respect for Crawford. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was just as tough as nails and a great leader. So you make a good point. You could convince me to replace one of the guys on my list on that, because Crawford did make my list, but I couldn't do it because there are people I left off because of the talent Tennessee brought in there. I mean, another great example, a great leader, just so people know, I left McCallan Castles off my list because Ethan Davis, I think, is going to play the same role. Just he's too good to not be better than Castles.
Yeah, I was watching Kitzelman in practice, and I think he's going to be really good, the transfer from Alabama.
Cooper Mays here, second down.
Who does Tennessee miss most on the defensive side of the ball?
It's the and I debated with this because I think they're significantly deeper in the secondary, but I think there are two defensive backs they're going to miss as a tie for the most, and I named them both: Gabe Jeudy-Lally and Jalen McCullough. And the reason is Gabe Jeudy-Lally was a utility player that you really want on your team, and I think they're hoping a Jacoby Thomas or Jalen McMurray will be that, but there's no evidence that they could be what Gabe Jeudy-Lally was. The other one is Jalen McCullough, and they're already missing him because Jordan Thomas has gone down for the season. And so I think Jalen McCullough is a very, very good safety, was a reliable player for Tennessee. So I do think they're going to miss him.
Now, and I would probably lean more towards Gabe Jeudy-Lally because I thought he was more versatile. So I think he can do a little bit more things, but I think McCullough is the better overall player. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here, third down.
All right. We mentioned Jacob Warren, and I'm curious
Well,
how
not
much
yet we're mentioning Jacob Warren.
we are mentioning Jacob Warren as the second player on the offensive side that Tennessee would miss the most. I'm not here to say that Warren is the most athletic tight end in the world, but his leadership, his dependability cannot be overrated. He was there and did what he was supposed to do, and that's why he was such a key to this offense. Even though he didn't catch a lot of balls, he was a good blocker as well.
So the important part about Josh Heupel's offense that everybody needs to know is he switches tight ends each drive. One drive, he has the tight end that stretches the field and is the athletic guy, and then the next drive, he has the blocking tight end. Jacob Warren was always the blocking tight end. He complimented Princeton Fant in 2022, and he complimented McCallan Castles last year. This year, I told you guys I'm leaving out Castles because I think Ethan Davis will be better. But I put Jacob Warren on because I know you mentioned Miles Kitzelman, Dave. But as important as it is for the blocking tight end to be physical and just have a great body type, understanding the offense and being a smart player is as important. And Jacob Warren was the smartest player on the team last year. He understood the offense. And I just don't know that Miles Kitzelman can pick that up. I mean, Jacob Warren was in the offense for 3 years and was already a really smart player. You wanted him out there as much as possible. So because of that, I don't see how Tennessee doesn't have a drop-off on the blocking tight end side from Warren to whether it be Kitzelman or whoever, or Charlie Brown or whoever else steps in.
But the fact that McCallan Castles was able to have an impact as a transfer in year number one, does that... Yes.
McCallan Castles was just the receiving tight end. I think it's a little easier to be
Okay.
the receiving tight end than the blocking tight end in this system.
Yeah, there's a lot of shielding going on. It's difficult on footwork. So we said players that Tennessee missed on offense and defense. Let's wrap up the list.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, fourth down.
For fourth down. So we've mentioned Gabe Jeudy-Lally, Jalen McCullough, Jacob Warren, Jalen Wright. But the guy that's on your list that should have come back, that could have come back, is Jabari Small. If Tennessee has Jabari Small, you erase one of the major question marks, and that is Tennessee's depth at tailback or lack thereof. He should have come back to school.
Totally agree. See, this is why Jalen Wright was number one on my list, because Tennessee needs a feature back. You are right. They can plug a feature back in if you're just average. We don't know if they have an average feature back. And Jalen Wright wasn't just average. Jalen Wright was elite. He's going to be an NFL star, guys. Jabari Small was probably average. I would say above average. He ran hard. He was a tough player. He was a blocker. He was a team guy. He would have thrived this year. He would have gotten all the carries. And Jabari Small is what you just talked about. You just need a feature back that can do the job. Jabari Small can do the job, and that's going to make him look great. And I'm with you. He should have come back. He is better than Cam Selden. He is more reliable than Dylan Sampson because of his pass pro. He's more proven than Peyton Lewis. And they're going to miss him because now they're in a situation where if Peyton Lewis doesn't work out, I'm telling you guys, they're in serious trouble at running back this year.
Now, I think they're in trouble. Probably not as much trouble as you do because you don't like Selden, but I think Selden's going to be okay. 4 Downs today brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty. And then I'll tell you what other player that Tennessee will miss that was not mentioned in 4 Downs.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
No charge to work with Medicare Misty, and she is certified in over 40 states. So just because we cover Tennessee and the SEC, don't think that you can't take advantage of the services that Medicare Misty can offer, and they are fantastic. You left one off. And Caleb was nice enough to get me prepared. He sent some unmentioned ones, and we mentioned a couple of them. Jeremiah Crawford, Ramel Keaton, Charles Campbell, Aaron Beasley, McCallum Castles. But there's one you left off.
Elephant in the room?
Chase McGrath.
Well, no, Charles Campbell was who? You're mixing 2022. Chase McGrath was a 2022 kicker. Charles Campbell was a 2023 kicker.
Okay, Charles Campbell, excuse me. That to me, turning it over to Turbeville, who I hope has a fantastic year. And I know his family, and I think he will have a fantastic year. But without Campbell, who you did have in there, so I apologize, there is at least a question mark with a team that is going to play in some close games, Caleb. And I would much rather have a bona fide kicker than an unknown place kicker heading into a season like this.
But we didn't. So you were right with Chase McGrath in 2022, but Charles Campbell was never put in a situation where he needed to make a significant kick last year. And so I think or did he make one against Kentucky? I take that he may have made a key one against Kentucky. You guys kind of quote me on that, but you guys can fact check me on that. I won't mind. I won't be offended. But I do believe Josh Turbeville will be a reliable kicker for Tennessee. There's an open competition to kickers. Somebody's bound to work out there. And here's the thing about kicker. It's so mental. And that it depends on the coach whether or not the coach can make you confident enough to kick. And I know this because Michael Pilardi struggled a lot under Derek Dooley, and whatever you want to say about Butch Jones, he was much better for Michael Pilardi's mentality because he knew how to talk to kickers. Whereas Derek Dooley was like, "Don't you miss this kick? You better not miss this kick." And it's like,
son of a
yeah.
If you miss this kick, I will kill you.
And you know that you can hear Derek Dooley getting mad like that, right? And it messed with kicker psyche a lot. So I do think Michael Pilardi, I'm not Michael Pilardi, listening to myself, Charles, I do think because there's open competition, they'll find the right guy. And that's why I left him off the list. So we mentioned Campbell, Castles, Crawford. I got to mention 3 more real quick. You mentioned Ramel Keaton. Love Ramel Keaton. Tennessee's too deep at receiver this year. That's why they're not going to miss him. Love you, Ramel. You were a great guy, but they're too loaded. Aaron Beasley was a reliable player. Arian Carter's going to be better. And then the last one, the obvi that we haven't touched on, elephant in the room, didn't mention Joe Milton.
Well, I mean, I think that everybody thinks it's an upgraded quarterback. If it's not, then we can certainly second guess ourselves. But
yeah, that's the same with Aaron Beasley. It's an upgraded linebacker too, not because Aaron Beasley wasn't a solid player, but because we all expect Arian Carter to be significantly better, don't we?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing too, if Nico doesn't live up to the hype, you know how stubborn Josh Heupel is. There's not going to be a change.
Josh Heupel can't. He leveraged way too much on Nico. What's the old saying? It's like, if I give you $1,000 loan and you can't pay it back, you got a problem. If I give you a $300 million loan and you can't pay it back, we both got a problem then, right? And
I haven't heard that before, but I like it.
Yeah. Nico is the $300 million loan. If Nico can't deliver on all the investments they made in him, that's not a problem for Nico. That's a problem for Nico and Tennessee. They are tied together. Josh Heupel's future is tied to Nico.
When you talk about investment, I think people naturally think about that $2 million. It's more than that. It's the time invested in practice that the snaps that could go to Merklinger or Gastamore or whoever, it's, he can't be a bust. I mean, if he were a bust and Tennessee did not finish inside the top 25, it would be the major story in college football.
It is the equivalent of, you've seen this, Dave, a lot of times. The Titans did this, hiring Brian Callahan as head coach, and they're going to regret it. Coaches are hired to coach certain quarterbacks that the franchise wants to build around. The coach and the quarterback's future is tied together, right? If the quarterback doesn't work out, the coach is gone. And that is the situation. And that's why the Titans will regret it, because Will Levis isn't going to work out. I don't care who coaches him. And so in college, you're seeing that with Heupel. Heupel's entire future depends on Nico Iamaleava succeeding.
That sounds like a strong statement, but I tend to agree with it. Portions of the program brought to you by Don Self, State Farm. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they have built their business on taking care of their customers. The greater Chattanooga area, call 423-396-2126. Go to donself.net. That's right below donself.net. And if he doesn't service your area, he'll get you to a State Farm agent that will take care of you. And Don Self is fantastic. So give him a call. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. In retrospect, what would be more disappointing? Peyton Manning not winning a national championship, or Nico not winning a national championship? That's kind of out there, isn't it? Would you like a moment to think about that?
It's hard to think about it retroactively because Tennessee did win a national championship after Peyton Manning. But I think it would be
Peyton because he played as a freshman. I would just argue Peyton because he had more playing time leading into his prime junior and senior year, and he stayed an extra year. So I would say that's more disappointing.
I'm going to say Nico, and here's why.
Okay,
it's because of the nature of college football. When Peyton played, winning your conference championship was like winning a national championship at that time, right? Your conference was your nation. And college football was much more regionalized. The national championship was like, if you play for a high school football team and that team finishes number one in the nation, you're like, yeah, that's nice, but your focus is the state championship, right?
Yes.
And when Peyton played, your focus is winning your conference championship, and the national title's kind of in the ether. Well, Peyton won a conference title. He won an SEC title. And that's what he came back to Tennessee for, and I'm not going to dismiss that. Now, because college football has become so nationalized and they focus everything on the playoff, the only thing that matters is the national title. There's nothing to celebrate if you don't win it.
Well, you're right. And I used to argue that the SEC, winning the SEC was almost analogous to winning the national title. I really can't make that argument anymore.
Yeah, it can't be made anymore. They focus so much on the national title now with the playoff. And I told you guys that was going to happen the minute you expanded the playoff. When Peyton Manning played, Dave, there was no such thing as a meaningless bowl game. That didn't exist.
Very good. All right. I tell you what, I'm a little taken aback by what I've seen out of Hoover, Alabama. So you're wondering why in the world would Dave care about what's happening in Hoover, Alabama? Well, it kind of relates to general practice etiquette and toughness, of which I've wondered about Tennessee before. So let's get into that.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
So we've discussed on this program before how Josh Heupel is very against fighting in practice. Tennessee does not have physical practices because they want to keep people healthy. This all started probably around 2000 when Philip Fulmer started utilizing thud practices in which you hit people, but you don't take them to the ground. So football has continually gotten either softer or more PC, depending on what you think. I want to share this, if I may. Should I pull it up, Caleb? Because this
I got it with me. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah, pull it up. This is from Hoover High School, and I want you to tell me if this is a bad thing. So let me set it up first. What you want to watch is the coach, the guy in the white shirt on your left. He's going to run through the offensive line, and watch how this ends. All right, hit play.
All right.
Okay, so he's the tailback. He's running through the offensive line, and boom, there's a guy just standing there. It's a little comedic. There's a guy just standing there in a group of players, and he knocks him over. Now, the coaches...
My favorite Twitter troll, 3-year Letterman, would be proud.
Yes, the coaches at Hoover High School are under investigation for this. Guys, he ran into a player and knocked a player down during a drill. Has football just gotten too soft? Should this be a thing?
No, it's not. It's a high school. You don't put your hands on students. That is the rule of the day. You don't do it. I'm sorry. And guys, this is very relevant for another reason, and I'm going to bring this up. The guy Dave calls Bullethead, Jeremy Pruitt, was an assistant coach in Hoover, Alabama before he made it to the college ranks. He has experience coaching there. Jeremy Pruitt, in 2019, who remembers when Jared Garantano went rogue against Alabama? Jeremy Pruitt had a perfect call on for a handoff to Quavaris Crouch for a touchdown that would have made it a one-score game. Garantano decided to go rogue and try to sneak it into the end zone. He fumbles. Alabama returns it for a touchdown. Game's over. Jeremy Pruitt yells at Garantano, benches him. I was good with all that. But he also grabs Garantano's face mask. And I wrote at the time, I said, that shows his lack of maturity as a head coach. Yell at him, bench him, you can even throw him under the bus a little bit in the press conferences. But you don't get physical with your players, particularly on camera. And Jeremy Pruitt did that. He crossed the line. I didn't call for his firing at that time, but I did say that is a big no. You don't do that. Okay. And yeah, Jeremy Pruitt crossed a huge line. This coach crossed a huge line. You don't get physical with your players. You don't. And this goes back to the Bobby Knight days. Everybody was always like, oh, Bobby Knight was just giving tough love. He choked a player. That's not tough love, okay? You don't grab a player's neck and call that tough love. You don't get physical with players. I don't care what you guys want to tell me about. Well, back in my day in the 1970s, we did this. Well, your day sucked, okay? So I'm saying you don't do that nowadays.
Let's advance this for a second. What if that very practice happened in college? Because you've got a right to say what you said about minors, high school students, okay? You don't put your hands on them, period. I get that. But what about if this happened in college? There be any hubbub about it?
No, it's still a problem. I'm going to say this caveat. It's actually not as big of a problem as it was when Jeremy Pruitt was doing it. Because in college, like just 5 years ago, or when Bobby Knight was doing it, you're a multimillionaire head coach in a position of authority and you're getting physical with players. But now players have leverage because they're getting paid. However, the coach still is the authority figure, even in the NFL. I don't even care if it's in the pros. You don't get physical. When you are the person in power, you don't get physical with the person who works under you. Okay? That is rules anywhere. Dave, I work for you. I'll just tell you, I'll say it. You're not allowed to physically touch me in an angry way. You're not allowed to do that. Okay. I will not I'm not going to stand for that. If my boss is anywhere, get physical with me when they're angry with me. That's a problem. You don't get to do that. Sorry, Dave. I hope I didn't hurt you on that. But.
No, why is Caleb so excited? I don't know, because you started the fight with him. So we're all over
the place. Dave has never touched me, guys.
But listen to that. You are big time in the minority, by the way. Because I asked the poll question. It's on our YouTube page. Now, first, I want to finish up the last poll question. Who is more key to the Vols' success this season? Nico got 55% of the vote. The defensive line got 44% of the vote. That's way closer than I thought. But the new one has football gotten too soft. 73% say yes. 27% say no. I've heard how strong you feel about it. Are you surprised by that number?
No, because I think there's lines here. When you say that, people could say, Dave, you could say football has gotten too soft and at the same time say coaches should not put their hands on players. There is a line between the two. Philip Fulmer, you tell me you cover practice. Did Philip Fulmer ever assault a player? Ever?
No, but I'm sure he put his hands on him like to teach him technique.
Well, yes, but teaching technique versus running at somebody from the sideline and trying to tackle them and ripping their helmet off is different. If you're putting their hands on somebody because you're trying to teach them technique, or if you bring somebody in, you like forward bring them into a hug and be like, hey, you're okay. Like, that's different. But if you put your hands on somebody out of, just out of anger, that is a problem. You can't do that. And I don't think Fulmer ever did that. That doesn't mean Fulmer didn't encourage fighting in practice sometimes among his players to toughen them up.
Yes, he did. Let me
that's not a problem. But
yeah. Let me ask you this. Is it a concern whatsoever that Tennessee doesn't hold the most physical practices in the world and that there is no fighting? Fighting in and of itself is not a good thing, but sometimes on the football field, it actually is a great thing. Tennessee doesn't win a national championship in '98 without the offense standing up and having a huge monster brawl and getting their respect from the defense. So fighting in a football practice is not always a bad thing. So does it concern you at all the way Josh Heupel approaches his practices and approaches the way he conducts business from day to day?
No, because of the way the game has changed. And this isn't just football. This is basketball. Back in the 80s in sports, you needed, like in basketball, you wanted your Dennis Rodman to be your enforcer. You know what I mean? Or you wanted somebody like that. Or in football, you wanted your tough guy that was going to start fights. Even into the 2000s, you wanted your Ron Artest, the guy that was just crazy enough to go beat up a fan in the stands. Okay, you wanted that guy on your team. But the games have both changed to a level where that level of physicality is not allowed. Whether or not you agree with that is one thing. But I think because of that, I don't think it's as necessary anymore to encourage this type of fighting, because let's be honest. See, it's funny because we just talked about him last segment. For those who don't know, this is what Peyton Manning got criticized for a lot in the NFL. Remember, Peyton Manning was such a technocrat computer guy that he didn't encourage toughness among his teammates in practice. And he openly said, like, when players would fight on behalf of him, he'd be like, I don't want that. That's a 15-yard penalty. It's going to cost me a drive. And a lot of players were like, I just wish he would show just a little more, like, moxie, because that was the difference between Peyton and Brady. When everything about Brady kind of allowed his players to show some moxie on his behalf. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you can be both cerebral and tough, but in your opinion, what's more important?
I still think tough is more important on a general sense, but for a quarterback, I don't know. I'm debating it for a quarterback. I don't think Peyton wasn't tough. Peyton wanted to get hit.
No, I'm talking about a coach.
I want my coach to be cerebral. The toughness should come from the players. The toughest teams in the late 90s, that was because Al Wilson was tough.
Well, first of all, I think you have to be cerebral to some extent. I don't think it's a situation where you can just get a coaching job anymore. So I'm going to say toughness. And I think Josh Heupel is tough, despite the way that he runs his practice. And I think that he is tough on his guys in terms of discipline, the amount of work they have to do, and they build mental toughness through hours of working out. I mean, I've seen the schedules. They are insane in the offseason. So I think that's how he builds his toughness. And I've never seen Tennessee get out physicaled in the past couple of years. Maybe the second half against Alabama, possibly. But when have you seen them get out physical?
I really haven't. I thought they just got outsmarted in some of their losses last year. But breaking news to everybody on the message board. Dave thinks Ed Orgeron would make a better coach than Mike Elko. Mike Elko's the cerebral Ivy League guy, and Ed Orgeron is the tough guy.
No, everybody's a combination of both. I would take Elko 100 times over Orgeron.
But Orgeron, whatever you want to say about him, he wasn't cerebral at all. But he instilled the most toughness of any coach ever, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, he taught you to be tough.
Yeah, but the poor kids. I mean, how many IQ points did that cost them?
Wait, okay, here we go. Lane Kiffin is all cerebral. You know Lane Kiffin doesn't push toughness. He's all cerebral. Lane Kiffin or Ed Orgeron. You just said you would take Ed Orgeron over Lane Kiffin, Dave.
No, I didn't.
You did. Dave said he did. Guys, Dave thinks Ed Orgeron makes a better football coach than Lane Kiffin.
If you give me the perfect assistant coaching staff, maybe. He had the perfect assistant coaching staff at LSU.
I mean, that is true.
Okay, how about this? Be honest. And I know how you feel the same way about Ed Orgeron I do. And he got pretty lucky by getting the job at LSU and got lucky winning a national championship. But would you take his entire coaching staff? He had two great coordinators in 2019. Or would you take Ole Miss's entire coaching staff?
I'd still take Ole Miss's. I think Ed Orgeron had it. Hold on. Let me finish. Ed Orgeron had a great coaching staff, yes. he also had the most talented team in college football history, the team that would actually beat the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. Okay, he did. He had that team. 2019
recruited
LSU beat 2000. Yes, he recruited them, but okay, fair enough. But we're not talking about that aspect of coaching. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, I think it's more impressive to go 11-2 in 2 out of 3 years at Ole Miss than to win one national title at LSU. I do. I think that's more impressive.
Okay. All right.
But we all know this now. Dave wants the coach that will lift with the players, because whatever you want to say about Orgeron, he probably could outlift half the defensive line in his 50s, couldn't he?
Oh, no. I don't want the guy that's going to live with the players. I don't think that's very wise. I think you need to draw a line there. But
Or another one. Does Dave prefer John Chavis to David Cutcliffe? I'm just trolling Dave, guys. But
well, I do want the head coach to know where the weight room is. I mean, because right or wrong, perception when you're out there selling yourself and selling your program is a factor. That's why I wish for the. Go ahead.
Sorry, what? I wish for the amount of times he likes to take his shirt off, Bruce Pearl knew where the weight room was, but
I look pretty good. He's Caleb Calhoun, Dave Hooker, 2 minutes, and then coaches on the hot seat, and why the NCAA has zero power anymore, and they just proved it in Ann Arbor. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. 2 minutes off the hook sports. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. And don't forget, you can catch a podcast anywhere you pod, whether that's Spotify, Apple, wherever. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate it, because we'll be back firing coaches in 2 minutes.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
That's crazy.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren, asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Stat of the day coming up. Hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Don't forget, you can pod us wherever you might pod, be it on Apple or Spotify or wherever you would like to go for your podcast. And we're here each and every weekday on YouTube as we broadcast live at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So we'd love for you to be a part of the program. Caleb, the stat of the day is brought to you by Apex Apparel Group Design. Here's a stat How about 15% off your first order for any of that spirit wear or company apparel that you need? They will absolutely do it for you. Apex Apparel Group Design, 15% off your first order, or call Tyler at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. That number is right below. 15% off your first order if you mention Off the Hook Sports. So what do we got? Our stat of the day there, Caleb.
It's August the 8th, 8/8. For the record, it's my anniversary, my 9-year anniversary with my wife.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Also, I'd like to send a shout out to the most important player to the greatest number 88 in Tennessee football history. Although he did change his jersey, he also wore number 85. And I am talking about a young. I'm sorry,
Stanley Morgan.
No.
Okay.
But you're on the right track. Tim McGee.
Tim McGee
changed. Yes. Wore number 88 in the 85 season. Tim McGee was one of the best all-time receivers in Tennessee history, caught a lot of passes for a lot of touchdowns, and was actually, Dave, as you know this, I'm going to give you the key stat in a minute. But was one of the few players of that 85 team that actually had NFL talent, because very few players made it in the NFL because it was just an overachieving team. The stat of the day is the 85 Sugar Bowl, where Tim McGee's most important touchdown was not a receiving touchdown. It was he recovered a fumble in the end zone off a blocked punt against Miami in the second quarter in the end zone to give Tennessee a 14-7 lead. So the stat of the day is Tim McGee's touchdown off a blocked punt that set Tennessee in motion to dominate Miami.
Pretty good. I like it. I like that. And for those that don't know, that 85 Sugar Bowl win against Miami felt like a national championship. I mean, it did. Because they didn't have a unified national champion back then. And I know they didn't win the national championship, but it felt like that. Will we ever have moments like that again, Caleb?
No, and that's why I hate the college football playoff. All the moments that will be remembered by teams that won it all and playoff wins they had that year. I mean, I guess maybe they're like, think about the NFL for a minute. Do you
don't
remember
make the playoffs? That's a bad year, right?
Yeah, it's a really bad year if you don't make the playoffs. Exactly. Yeah. So the NFL, I mean, think about this for a minute. The NFL, I mean, the Music City Miracle maybe with the Titans, but I can't really go any further than that. Can you?
No, I can't. So the thing that I love about preseason football, to change gears on you a little bit, is that what does every coach say? And it's so funny in college football. Every coach says this player's doing better. This player's making improvements. We talked about those guys like Joshua Joseph. College, it's always optimistic. Whereas the NFL, it always seems like, man, this guy's really got to come along and this sort of thing. So there's a lot of optimism around college football. But some of these guys that are visiting with reporters aren't going to have jobs in about 6 months. So you had some hot seat coaches, and I want to go through those, and I want to share whether or not I agree or disagree. So we'll go ahead and get it started now. You want to start with Kalani Sitake?
Yes, and this one's relevant.
You want me to pronounce his name?
You pronounced it right, but Kalani Sitake beat Tennessee in 2019, but he's been losing a lot of players to Tennessee since 2019. I mean, I'm talking Gabe Jeudy-Lally, I'm talking Keenan Peely, and he did go 5-7 last year, and now BYU's at Power 5. And the reason I just mentioned him, I'll mention him quickly because he's not as much on the hot seat, but BYU, for those who don't know, has a very proud football program that's a very solid, consistently winning one, and going 5-7 is not acceptable there. So, yeah, he's on the hot seat. So that's number 10. And I think he keeps
that intellectual versus tough head coach, I've interviewed him in person. He's the latter. All right. So
okay.
I agree that he's on the hot seat, and it's a matter of time.
All right. So here's my question.
Okay.
Well, let's do another one. Fired or not after this year? I say not for him. I say he keeps his job.
Oh, I think he's fired. Okay.
All right. You think he's fired? Okay.
Yeah. Scott Satterfield, Cincinnati.
2 years ago, Luke Fickell went undefeated at Cincinnati, took them to the college football playoff. Then they went 9-4. Scott Satterfield takes over this past year and goes 3-9. I think he's getting a bit of a break because of the fact that it's his first year. But if he does that again, I think he'll be fired after 2 years, particularly with Cincinnati at the Power 5 level now.
I would agree with that.
But I think he keeps his job.
Justin Wilcox, Cal.
Here's a guys who remembers this one. If Justin Wilcox doesn't leave Tennessee in 2012, Derek Dooley might keep his job. Honestly, that was the big thing that cost Tennessee was Justin Wilcox leaves and Sal Sinceri is hired as defensive coordinator. And it sounds like everybody that was interviewing Sal Sinceri was close at the time knew it would be a disaster. You could tell me if you knew that, Dave.
I was told that he wasn't very intelligent and he didn't work with people well. But other than that, he was a great coach.
Oh, great.
That's somebody that actually coached with him. Said he's not very intelligent, but it's not very intelligent and not good with people. But other than that,
oh my gosh,
it was a very backhanded compliment, as you might imagine.
So the former head coach, the former defensive coordinator at Tennessee is entering his first year in the ACC. Over his last 4 years in the Pac-12, he went 1-3, 5-7, 4-8, and 6-7. This thing could fall out in the ACC. I don't know what expectations Cal has, but he could be gone if he doesn't step it up this year.
I actually think he's okay because he'll be in the ACC and it'll be a little bit easier. Clark Lee at Vandy.
I agree. I think he keeps his job.
Okay, Clark Lee at Vandy. I don't know.
Clark Lee should not be on the hot seat. I'm going to say that up front. He shouldn't be on the hot seat. He has an impossible job, guys. Okay, but he is because here's what happened, Dave. Vanderbilt went 5-7 in 2022 with a strong finish to the season, and everybody thought they would take that next step in 2023. And everybody forgot it's Vanderbilt. They don't take steps because you can't take steps at Vanderbilt. No. So they fell back and went 2-10. So I think that's putting him on the hot seat. The only reason I actually think he's a smart coach, but the biggest reason I question his intelligence, smart people don't take the Vanderbilt job.
All right. Well, he didn't help himself either by his first time at SEC Media Days. He said something to the effect of the goal is to win a national championship at Vanderbilt. No, it's not. It's just
it's not.
It's to be relevant.
I say he's fired after this year. I think he's going to be gone.
Yeah, I do too, but I don't know that it matters because it's Vanderbilt. Mario Cristobal at Miami. I was really high on him. I missed out on him.
Okay, here's the funny thing about Mario Cristobal. He's not on most people's hot seats. He's only on my hot seat. That's why I have him at number 6. And he's on my hot seat because I think he should have been fired for that one stupid decision he made last year. I think that's inexcusable. And that tells me all I need to know that he's not on the intelligent side of coaches. He's on the toughness side. He got Cameron Ward from Washington State this offseason, which increased expectations. Everybody's excited. I think they're going to underachieve. And I think he's going to lose the team. And I think people are still mad about what happened last year with Georgia Tech. So I think they're going to bottom out, and I think he gets fired.
Okay, so then at number 4, you've got Shane Beamer. I think
but you lost. Well, just real quick, let's just mention Dave Aranda at Baylor.
I missed Dave Aranda. Sorry.
Yeah, Dave Aranda at Baylor goes 3-9 last year. I think he's fired after this year. I think they wanted to fire him last year, so I think they're going to fire him this year.
So, I hate that I skipped Dave Aranda. Shane Beamer, South Carolina. I think this is his last year at South Carolina.
I think Shane Beamer's seat is very, very hot. I think he has a horrible year. I think they give him an extra one after this, though, because I think South Carolina doesn't want to admit yet they messed up with him. And I think they're tired of transitioning coaches. So I think no matter how bad he does, they stick with him after this year because he's going to tell everybody, remember that time I knocked Tennessee and Clemson out of the college football playoff? Because of Connor Stallions.
We'll see how that investigation, when it's concluded, could hurt him. Will that happen before the end of the year? I mean, that could be a factor if he gets somehow included in that. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. And then we have a coach that I think most people nationally would disagree strongly with you, Ryan Day. However, you and I are kind of on the same boat here. It feels like they're pushing Ryan Day to be a champion, and he needs to accept the pushing because if he doesn't do it pretty quickly, his time in Columbus could be short-lived.
Everything Ohio State is doing this year is to make sure that they that nobody can say anything when they do fire Ryan Day, that you don't have an argument. And what I mean by that is they are spending $20 million on NIL. They're bringing in Chip Kelly, so they have their future guy if Ryan Day doesn't work out. They're very angry up there about OSU losing 3 straight to Michigan. And here's the thing. They can't even claim it was because of Connor Stallions because the stories are out there that Ohio State got word of that before the 2022 season and still got blown out by Michigan. And the scandal was already out by 2023. and Ohio State lost to Michigan. So you can't even make the Connor Stallions claim. And for those who don't realize, someone tried to say, Dave, this is hilarious. This was on First Take. This is when you know you don't know football. Stephen A. Smith tried to say, or college football, he tried to say, well, Ohio State's 40-0 in the Big Ten outside of Michigan. If you know college football, that's not something you say, right?
No. Stephen A. Smith is not always on point when it comes to college football. As a matter of fact, incredibly rare. Now, the top 2 coaches on Caleb's list are actually from the SEC. So what kind of changes could we see in the SEC? Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at Varner Ford in Clinton.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sam Pittman, most underrated coach in the nation.
Oh my gosh, you are ridiculous.
He's not. I like him, but logically, yeah, it's probably about time for him to go to Arkansas. I mean, I just like him because he's a O-line guy.
Yeah, he's a line coach he was meant to be a career line coach.
Yes.
And stumbled into head coaching. Sorry, those things don't usually work. I mean, Ed Orgeron was a line coach who stumbled into head coaching too. And
Fulmer, it worked with Fulmer too. But
it did work with Fulmer, but honestly, they kind of remind me of each other, Pittman and Fulmer. Not Orgeron; he's a step below. But
I've always thought there was a similarity there. We've never discussed it before, but I've always kind of seen that. And Sam Pittman, if he were at Tennessee and got a couple of breaks and had the area of Atlanta to recruit, I think could have had much more success than he's had at Arkansas for sure.
Oh, I agree. If Sam Pittman it's funny, if he were at an LSU or if he were at a Georgia, we might be talking about a different Sam Pittman because he could just recruit talent. And then all you need to do is instill toughness and get the right staff members at that point, right? To run the office. And so you're right. I think that could work, but typically it's career line coaches. That's a different kind of animal than kind of being a cerebral guy. And by the way, that doesn't mean line coaches aren't smart. I think Rodney Garner is very smart. I think Rodney Garner has been very happy with his career as a line coach, right? And what he's done with it.
Yes, so, no question about it. I think he's done a fantastic job. And then you have Billy Napier at number 1. I can't argue with that. As a matter of fact, if I had to make a bet that he will make it through the season or not, I would say not.
The only thing that might make them stick with Billy Napier, and I'm reaching here, Dave, so you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but Scott Strickland is the one who hired Billy Napier. This would be the second time he has to fire a head coach, and he would have to admit he's wrong a second time. He can make the excuse.
I was told, I'm going to kind of stop you there, if I may.
Okay.
I was told by a really good source, Scott Strickland's not going to be making that hire.
I can believe that. Because here's the thing, Scott Strickland.
He's former sports information director, for goodness sake.
Here's the thing, but even if he's not, it'll be somebody after him who will be after this season. And the reason I'm saying that is because he will use the excuse that Florida got robbed with the toughest schedule in history this year and say that it's unfair. They're trying to rebuild and they got the toughest schedule in history, so he deserves another year. So you can't say I made the wrong decision. That's the excuse he's going to fall back on. So I think Billy Napier actually keeps his job and Sam Pittman gets fired. And by the way, I think Ryan Day gets fired. I meant to mention that last time. Ryan Day's gone. He's done. It's over.
I think Day last. I think Pittman last. I think Napier is as good as fired.
Wow. We're the exact opposite of each other.
The exact opposite. So there we go.
But Day and Pittman, they had offensive coordinators forced on them in Chip Kelly and Petrino, which is basically code for you're fired. Arkansas will be naming Bobby Petrino as head coach by this in 4 months. They were going to welcome back Bobby Petrino with open arms. It's going to be a motorcycle ride of a situation, but I think they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Who'd you rather have, Bobby? Who'd you rather promote, Bobby Petrino or Chip Kelly? Who's going to have the game pass them by more?
Petrino's pro style, so you don't take advantage of offensive lineman's ability to get downfield in passing situations. So I would say slightly Chip Kelly is still on point with his game. And I think his offense is still solid. I just don't think it's incredibly innovative. It's on the YouTube page. Most likely SEC coach to get fired: Billy Napier, Sam Pittman, Shane Beamer. So far, everybody believes in my take. Ha ha. Billy Napier, 47% of the vote. Sam Pittman and Shane Beamer both with 26% of the vote. Take a moment if you can to hit that.
You guys got to pay attention to the details, though, of the poll. You got to pay attention to the details.
What are the details of the? Oh yes, very good. The Billy Napier. I swear that when he was introduced at SEC Media Days, that was his first year. If I had one more person tell me he was detail oriented, I was going to get physically ill. And it turns out he's the exact opposite, because he had a player show up on campus that didn't have his NIL money.
Who is intelligence alone? Derek Dooley or Billy Napier? Because they're clones of each other to me. They're exactly alike.
Total coin flip. Not even going to choose. I'm going to move on to something I wanted to get to. Jim Harbaugh and his show cause penalty is 4 years. What's the average time that an NFL coach gets to turn around a franchise?
Roughly 3 to 4 years.
Right. So basically, Jim Harbaugh got punished for he didn't get punished at all. So let's discuss the penalties that came down, Caleb, and why, if I'm Tennessee or any other school, I'm cheating like crazy. And I don't think anybody's there to stop me. What are your thoughts on the penalties?
This is what the penalty is. For those who don't know, the penalty is it's the stupidest thing. It's for impermissible contact with recruits during COVID. Let me be very clear with you guys on this. They're giving him this show cause because they know they're not going to be able to get him on the Counter Stallion stuff. This is like when OJ got sentenced for the stealing his stuff rather than for the double murder that he should have gotten sentenced for.
All right.
This is Al Capone getting sentenced on tax fraud, not racketeer, not RICO charges.
But that's my point. The NCAA didn't do anything to him, and he was the one that did it.
They try to maximize, yes, but they're not punishing Jim Harbaugh for the sign stealing because they can't get him on that. They know they're not going to be able to get him. So
they're not punishing. What are they going to do with the sign stealing? They're not. I will guarantee you, if there is a penalty levied by the NCAA, it's not going to be another 4-year show cause tagged onto it, which really, it takes that long to affect a career once you go to the NFL. I mean, he can come back and be the head coach at Tennessee in 4 years.
No, Dave, that's my point. That's why I agree with you on this. What I'm saying is that they gave the toughest punishment possible they could give for the violation that they quote unquote punished him for, because it was such a minor violation. They're doing that because they inevitably know what's coming out in 2 weeks. Dave, there's a Netflix documentary on Counter Stallions coming out in 2 weeks.
Yes.
The NCAA knows, because their enforcement is so bad, they're not going to be able to get Michigan on this because they are so bad with their enforcement. Their hands are tied. They can't do anything. So it's going to look like they're covering for Michigan. They're giving this penalty to Jim Harbaugh for this minor violation to say, see, we're not biased to Michigan. We gave them this tough penalty for the most minor violation possible, when in reality, it was because they want to cover themselves when they can't punish Michigan for cheating. So the message they're really sending is exactly what you said. Minor recruiting contact violations are a bigger deal than actually cheating to win games. That is what the NCAA is saying.
Okay. I'm just going to, this is the most simple question that I've ever posed to you. And the most simple question that I have ever posed to our audience, and it's a poll question on our YouTube page. You can vote for it now. Is it okay to cheat in college football?
Do you say cheat with recruiting contacts, or cheat the way Michigan cheating, sign stealing?
All the above.
Yeah, if you don't get caught. It's only cheating if you get caught. I've always been that type of guy. I with certain exceptions, I'm one of those where I'm like, sometimes cheating, with the exception of something like steroids, because if someone else takes steroids, you have to take steroids. But with football, if someone's like cheating to steal your signals, or if someone's doing things like that to get an edge on like knowing what you're doing, you can do the same thing, and you can turn that against them.
Let me ask you this. If you and Josh Heupel are best friends, and he calls you and he says, hey, Caleb, how are you? You say, I'm great. Baby's doing well. Everything's good. Everything's cranking along. Well, Caleb, I got this question for you. I've heard that this player at the University of Georgia is not happy where he is. And I have his cell phone number because I recruited him. Should I contact him? That's impermissible contact. That to me is clearly cheating. And that messing with another school's program in the midst of a season, yes, that's troublesome. But if the NCAA can't do anything and they don't have subpoena power to even prove it, but they can't punish you if they prove it, what's stopping you from doing those things?
Nothing. And well, I mean, theoretically, that's where they do have the power because that's what they punished Harbaugh for was impermissible contact. Theoretically.
Harbaugh was still at the University of Michigan. Let me just ask you this. Would he have gotten a 4-year show cause?
No, he wouldn't have.
No
Not
chance.
at all. No. I think this with Josh Heupel. But at the same time, I don't think he would have deserved a show cause for impermissible contact. Do you? That's not show cause worthy.
I think they were hypersensitive to the COVID thing, and I think they wanted to come down on them for that anyway, because that was, you use the term crimes against humanity. Some people view that as, not contacting people at the wrong time. I can see how they would get hypersensitive about it, is the point I'm
making. I just think they're just trying to get him get hypersensitive because they can't get him on counter stallions. Now, with Josh Heupel and contacting players, Dave, that's something I don't think should be a rule. Because quite honestly, if you work for a company, if you're working at the Knoxville News Sentinel, Dave, still, and, ESPN calls you, which they did, right, while you were working at the Knoxville News Sentinel, and says, hey, we'd love you to come work for us. Is that impermissible contacts because you're working with the Knoxville News Sentinel at the time?
That's a great point. And, yeah, that's a really good point because these are adults. I mean, the same rules that apply to all of us should apply to them now. And we have determined that they should be treated like regular individuals, not amateur student athletes. So you're right.
Yes.
I mean, why wouldn't you be able to have them up on a visit on an off weekend?
Right. Like when they're getting, I totally agree.
Can you imagine that if Georgia had an off weekend and a backup player took a visit to Tennessee?
That would be hilarious. And also you could cause strife within the team more than even Kelly Stafford caused. But one of the things that's important about this is one of my favorite things, Dave, is when you ever notice like when college football when hires are made, you hear this, the athletic director has reached out to this school for permission to contact the coach. I always laugh at that. I'm like, oh yeah, if Tennessee's trying to hire Cincinnati's head coach, they're really going to ask Cincinnati permission to speak to him. Like Tennessee really needs their permission. What is Cincinnati going to be like? No, you can't talk to him. So he was like, okay, we're going to talk to him anyway.
I'm just to the point where I think impermissible contact should just be taken out of the equation because it's the right of the student or the athlete to explore his options. And I don't think it's permissible because of technology. I mean, I can find anybody. If I need to find a marketing director of a particular business, there's Facebook or Twitter or something. Trust me on that. And speaking of, I want to tell you about our fine friends at Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Boulevard or online, QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave and Off the Hook Sports said hello. We would greatly appreciate that. It is your car service home in Chattanooga. So, Caleb, I don't know how I would approach cheating because I do feel like I have a moral obligation if I'm a coach to raise these young men in the right way. I think Josh Heupel probably leans more towards, hey, I'm going to do things the right way than not. Would you agree with that?
He absolutely does lean towards doing things the right way. That's why we talked about how he doesn't like to do fighting in practice. The only thing he doesn't do the right way is he's so dishonest with the media.
Well, he's not dishonest. He just didn't say anything.
He's sometimes dishonest.
Yeah.
He's sometimes dishonest. He props up players that he knows aren't going to be that good. He lies about injuries.
But what coach doesn't do that?
He takes it to another level, bro.
Homeboy
takes it to an extreme level. Now, would he ever melt down the way Butch Jones did and like come back at us, be like, "What do we want from our media? How dare you ask me this question? Because what you're suggesting is so untrue, even though it's 1,000% true, and I'm telling you the worst lie ever. Shai Tuttle landed on a helmet." But I don't think it's that. But like, come on, he's so dishonest with the media.
Man, I don't have a problem with that because I think they all are. I've been lied to every coach I've ever spoken to. Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. Also, their Asia Cafe coffee that you can purchase is fantastic. Go to asiacafe.org. That's right down below, asiacafe.org, and you will love it. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. As always, we're represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Off the Hook Sports. We will see you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You can pod us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you pod. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Have a fantastic day, morning, evening, night, whenever you're watching.